Craig, DRS very much in the news at Monza. First of all, talk us through the Marcus Ericsson accident.
Well, Marcus Ericsson accident was a DRS failure. So as he was approaching the corner, the DRS didn't close. As soon as you then brake, you get the weight shift and the car just snaps sideways, and you saw that huge barrel roll that he had.
But we've seen a number of DRS-induced incidents this year. You could argue that Daniel Ricciardo hit the back of Max Verstappen because of the approach speed at Baku. He had the toe. Romain Grosjean at Silverstone. We've had a few DRS mechanisms fail. We're at the point now, when they do fail, usually it's at high speed as well, obviously, because it's just as they're touching the brakes at terminal velocity. So where are we at, and what failed on the Ericsson car?
So to explain what happens with DRS, you have the FIA ECU tells the driver when they can activate the DRS. So that's the first aspect of it. They'll get a beep in their ear or a light on their dash, wherever they like to do it. And then the hydraulics pull an actuator that lifts the flap open, and obviously that then has the drag reducing effect that we've spoken about so much over the years. From there, the regulations become very vague. There's only one regulation to say if there's a failure, it must fail in the closed position, which is fine if it was already closed, but once it's open, you've got all sorts of issues. So what actually closes the upper flap when DRS is turned off, when you obviously start to brake, is the release of the hydraulic pressure, and then that just allows the flap to flap down with the aerodynamic pressure on top of it. It's not positively closed, so there's not a hydraulic mechanism that snaps it shut. So if there's any problem with friction in the system, with a design problem, which is I think probably where we're at with the Sauber issue, they're on a very small rear wing. DRS allows the flap to open up almost above the standard level of incidence, so that it's actually the air's going underneath it, lifting it up. So it's hard to get it to snap back down. After this, Sauber's solution was actually to put the bigger rear wing on, which was wrecked their top speed and had a big impact on the rest of their weekend in terms of performance. So they had that issue there that it wasn't closing. And you also have the issue, as we've seen with some of the other things, is at what point does it close? Now, every teams have different systems. And what must happen is as the car decelerates, it must close so that you can start to brake. Sometimes that's when you lift off the throttle, sometimes that's when you hit the brakes, and there's obviously a manual override. Now, some teams, and we know that Sauber and Leclerc have had some discussions with the team over this year about at what point does it close? Is it when you just start to lift or when you're completely off the throttle? Leclerc wanted it so that, maybe 95 or more of a throttle lift, it then closes it. So you can kind of lift slightly and then start to brake rather than it all happening in one snap moment. But all this is completely unregulated.
Which is extraordinary, really, given the safety aspects of everything we're talking about.
If you look at every other safety critical system on the car, there's lists and lists of regulations and backup and safety systems. So if you have a situation like this, there's no positive closing, there's no clear signal for when it should close. And as we saw, I think it was Schumacher and the Mercedes a few years ago, when it's kept open under hydraulic pressure because the valve had failed, there's no way for that pressure to bleed away and allow the flap to close. So all of this is a grey area of the regulations. Now, I know that you're against DRS completely, you want it banned. I think there could be some good regulations written in with wouldn't change the team's approach to their winter or anything, that would make it that little bit safer and allow us to continue to run it until 2021, when we know that Ross Brawn has these new rules and we think DRS will get rid of it there and have.
And I'm sure that's what will happen. And to make it clear, I'm against DRS partly for the safety things we've just been talking about, but also because philosophically it interferes with pure motor racing, which is what I'm all about. And I think we saw that at Monza, did we not? Because we saw, be really blunt about it, if there was no DRS, Kimi Raikkonen probably would have won the Italian Grand Prix, because Lewis perfectly used DRS to enable him to manage his tyres and then to make up the ground in the DRS zone behind Kimi, which he wouldn't have been able to do in normal circumstances. And I'm not sure if that, it's great to be able to strategize around DRS, and that's what we saw at Monza. But at the same time, is that real motor racing? That's the next question. And a Ferrari fan could rightly say today, without DRS, Kimi would have won that race.